What's up, guys? Welcome to gwhisky. My name is Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. If that sounds interesting, hit subscribe down below. And with that out of the way, let's jump into our review. Today we're looking at the Old Pulteney 12-year-old. Stick around. Alright, so before we jump into our review, I just wanted to give a quick thank you to you guys. This channel hit 5,000 subscribers a couple days back. It's a big milestone and I couldn't be happier about it. Of course, I am still a small channel, but growth is slow and steady, and that's just thanks to you guys liking and subscribing and commenting and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to drag this out, but a genuine thank you. It's appreciated. Anyway, we're looking at another Old Pulteney today. I have done the 15 and the 18 before, and with this 12-year-old, this will be the last of their affordable, age-stated range for me to touch on. And it's actually kind of surprising. It's taken me a long time to get around to reviewing this one. I do have a long history with Old Pulteney. I used to buy a lot of their old core range, and I have made no secret about my feelings for the new range, which aren't actually as negative as you might think. I know a lot of people love to bash the new range, and while I admit I do think it's a step down, I don't think it's bad whiskey. For those of you who don't know the story, a few years back, Old Pulteney changed their core range around. They swapped out the old 17 for a 15-year-old, and they swapped out the old 21 for an 18-year-old. As far as the 12 goes, it kept its age statement, but they did slap a new label on it, and they definitely did change the formula. Now, they don't tell us exactly what changed in the formula, and we don't actually know much about how this is made or matured. It does say bourbon barrels. I'm going to assume it's exclusively bourbon matured, but again, there's no clarification there. They don't tell us too much. Anyway, with regards to this 12-year-old, this is the first 12 that I've had from the new line. It's the first full bottle that I've had to myself anyway. I have tried this one several times before, either with friends or at tastings or whatever, but of course it always helps when you have your own bottle and you can spend some time with it. And this should be an interesting one. I'll be curious to see what's changed and what's stayed the same as compared to the older bottling, so let's find out. Let's jump into our review. And in the meantime, if you could kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. Alright, so for our specs, unlike the 15 and the 18-year-old, which come in at 46% ABV, this one only comes in at 40%. It is chill filtered and it is colored. And of course, none of that is ideal, but this is also one of the cheapest 12-year-old single malts that you can get. So because of that, I'm not going to give it a pass, but I will whine about it a little bit less. So we have our fake color there. As for the bottles, Pulteney bottles always seem to divide people. They seem to be like a love it or hate it type thing. I guess I'm more the former. It's not a love for me, but I think the bottles are cool. I think they're distinctive. They stand out on the shelf. So yeah, I mean, like label, bottle shape, colors, all of that works for me. We'll give it 4 out of 5 for presentation. It does tell us in German that color was added. They are not going to brag about being chill filtered. We've got maritime malt, rich character, traditionally crafted, sea air. You know, a lot of the usual buzzwords are here, but it's fine. Bottle's fine. Looks good. So I didn't add water. Let's try our nose. So right away, a bright floral honey. We do get that Old Pulteney maritime saltiness that is in here. There's some barley in here, there's some grassy notes in here, maybe like dried grass, there's hay, there's vanilla fudge, it's a little bit herbal, and there's a touch of mint in there. It's not bad. Let's try the palate. Alright, light body, for sure. We do get Old Pulteney. Once again, it's like those salty and buttery elements, those classic Pulteney flavors. They're here, although I do feel they're less pronounced than they used to be. Yeah, there's barley in here. There's more grassy notes, more herbal notes. We get some malt, we get some bright ginger in here, we get some vanilla fudge, and some salted peanuts. Now the finish. Alright, so again, maritime notes here. Get some caramel, some vanilla, some grass, some white pepper. It's a pretty short finish. So I used to come back to Old Pulteney 12 pretty often prior to the rebranding, and I always liked it. I don't think it was ever an epic whiskey, but it was always affordable, approachable, enjoyable, pleasant, that kind of thing. And one thing to keep in mind here is that any comparison that I make between the old one and this one is going off of memory, so keep that in mind. But still, I think I did prefer the older one. I thought it was the better whiskey, and obviously a lot has changed since then. It's not just the whiskey itself, but I've changed. You know, this was what, 4, 5, 6 years ago? It was a while back since they rebranded. I've grown personally, emotionally, spiritually, tastically, nope. But setting aside the fact that a lot of time has passed and I'm different and all that, if I put down the nostalgia goggles and just look at it for the whiskey that it was, or is now, I really do think the old one was better. I think it had more to say. And I also think a lot of that saltiness and maritime flavor and that butteriness that Old Pulteney is known for was more intense in the older ones. And unfortunately for me, that was a big part of why I initially fell in love with Old Pulteney. And this kind of thing happens quite often when somebody rebrands. What they do is they keep a lot of the old elements that you initially fell in love with, but they're kind of like tweaked or toned down a little bit, and it's just not quite the same. Especially that butteriness. A lot of the saltiness is still there, but Old Pulteneys were like rich and buttery, and I don't get it as much in the new line. Anyway, again, all of this is off of memory, which of course is tricky, so let's try to approach this whiskey as a standalone and judge it by its own merits. And in that context, this whiskey is fine. It's pleasant, it's easy, it's accessible. I don't think anything in here is going to offend anyone. It will give you enough of that Old Pulteney character. If you want your Old Pulteney fix, it is here. But this is the weakest of the new line, in my opinion. Which is funny, because the 15 and the 18 are both sherried whiskeys, and I wish they weren't. I think Pulteney's at its best when it's bourbon matured. But those ones have 46% ABV. They do have more age, and I just like them more. And it's funny because they are the ones that get all of the hate, and I do understand why. The 15 and the 18 replaced the 17 and the 21. And listen, the older line was better. It just was. It was better. But again, if we look at them for what they are, try and judge them on their own merits, the 15 and the 18 I don't think are bad whiskeys. I think they're decent whiskeys. I think they're a little bit too expensive, and I think the brand might have done more to like differentiate the character because they are a little bit too similar, but they're good. Meanwhile, the 12 here doesn't do too much for me. I don't think it's a bad whiskey. I think it's a competent whiskey. I think if you're on a budget and you want a Pulteney fix, this one does deliver, but it doesn't impress. And speaking personally, I'd look elsewhere. I'd go over to Old Pulteney's sister distillery and I'd buy the Enoch 12, which is about the same price. That one also has pretty weak specs, but I love that one. But tell you what, if you get to the shop and they're sold out of Enoch 12 and you don't want to spend any more money than what you'd set aside for that bottle, you could pick this one up. It's not going to be quite as good, but it is still decent. My score here is going to be 83. So ultimately, it doesn't really impress, but oppositely, it's not really a bad whiskey either. I think if my description sounds good, you might want to check it out. I think my biggest problem is just that I do have that nostalgia for the old line. I miss the old line. I really love the old 17. I do miss the old 12. The new one isn't quite there. It's not quite as good, but it's still solid enough. And again, very budget friendly, which brings us to value. Yeah, I really can't knock this for value. This is a very affordable single malt. It will not break the bank, and you are getting the Old Pulteney house style. It's not totally boring and generic. It does have some character there. But if you ask me if I'm going to buy another bottle of this stuff, probably not, but it might work for you. Alright, that's it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to help support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. Otherwise, you can like, comment, and subscribe. Always appreciated, and of course, I do want to hear from you. Have you tried our Pulteney 12 here? What are your thoughts? How does it compare to the old 12? Have you noticed a difference? Finally, down below in the comments, let me know what you want to see me review next, and I'll keep it in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye, guys.